And as crazy as it sounds, it is so liberating. It is so amazing because it's an instant clearing of your slate before your day. And even if you are a meditator, I suggest doing the purge before you meditate, because you'll go that much deeper when you have purged. So it's sort of like meditation, but on steroids. Because all you're doing is letting go of those thoughts. We can't control what comes into our minds, but we can control what we hold on to, right? So just purge out all of those things.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Shirin Edison, who's going to share how to reclaim your soul. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Germany, Kent. You become what you digest into your spirit. Whatever you think about, focus on, read about, talk about, you're going to attract more of the like into your life. Make sure they're all positive. The quote comes from our guest book, and it's what we're going to talk about. How to remake your soul based on what you want, free of what you've been programmed with. It's a subject we cover quite often, and the reality is most people are asleep, driving fast towards what they think they want. In reality, they have everything they need. They just need to stop and look for it. Are you ready to do that? Shirin will share how to detox and how to play and how to have fun and enjoy life, along with her journey to finding her path. Shirin Edison is an entrepreneur, seasoned media executive, and transformational speaker. She has produced films, original TV series, and specials, created several companies, and led campaigns for some of the most recognized companies: ABC, CBS, Discovery, BBC, Facebook, Apple, Intel, Virgin, and so many more. Today, Shirin guides seekers in her 6-week program, Free to Be, to disconnect their human being from their human doing to find true and lasting fulfillment. Let's meet Shirin and learn how. Welcome to Richer Soul, Shirin Edison. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
So I had a very interesting upbringing, which I won't go into, but we came to the States from Iran when I was 9. And I grew up in a fairly affluent family. And the revolution hit and we lost it all. So, my dad, we estimated that in all of it, he lost something like $19 million, which back then was really meaningful, and that's just in Iran. So my experience was, I should say, that from a very early age, that you can lose things very, very quickly at a blink of an eye. And that certainly taught me gratitude on the positive side, and on the not so positive side, I think it also created a certain angst and what's the word? What is it? Scarcity about money. So I tend to be, I've in the last decade, I've very much shifted so many different things. So I very much have a abundance mentality now, but my default is definitely scarcity, and I'm very frugal in many ways. In that way, I love the finer things in life, but I default to what is it? Frugalness.
There's nothing wrong with frugalness.
Frugalness. Yeah, that's my relationship with money. But in the last few years, it's definitely been stepping into abundance mentality, and not just abundance vis-a-vis finances, but abundance in love, abundance in health, abundance in community, abundance overall, and finances go along with it, which has shifted quite a bit for me. But when I am in stress and anxiety mode, my default is scarcity around money, and then I have to snap myself out of it.
It's amazing how much programming we get at kids, and most people don't even look at it.
Once we start talking about the book, I want to talk about that, because definitely we start at a very, very, very young age, and not just about finance.
Was your family able to rebuild when they got here? I'm assuming you were relatively young at that point.
My dad, who unfortunately passed away at the end of last year, and has always been such a mentor for me. I remember in one of his father-daughter talks, he said, you can drop me anywhere in the world, and I will not only learn how to survive, but to thrive. And that really stuck with me. And I was probably 15 or 16 when he shared that with me. And that truly was his MO. We came here, and he was a very well-known architect in Iran, and he was actually invited here to University of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, to teach. And then we moved up to Seattle, where he took a permanent professorship at University of Washington. But he got his license in California and in Washington State, and rebuilt his empire, which is pretty amazing.
Do you know where that attitude came from?
Gosh, I have to think about that, because his grandfather was a governor in Iran. So I'd imagine he was pretty potent. I think that it's generational, but my dad was a force, so I don't know. God gift. I don't know.
And that's why I ask. Sometimes it is, and other times it is cultural. Because when I grew up, we always were told that culturally. It's like wherever the people from where we came from, like our family and relatives, we're always told wherever they end up throughout the world, you will always see them be very successful.
Interesting.
And I have relatives all over the world, Africa, Hong Kong, London, like Canada, like all over. And the percentage of success is pretty high. But even with friends and family and people we know, a good chunk of them, I won't say the last generation, but the early generations just had that attitude of, we will go, we will figure out how to live here, we will do it, we will succeed. And that's just what we were taught.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the family side, I would say that, I've always felt like I've had a huge safety net. I say that I feel that I won the lottery of families, in that I knew and have always known and know that my family has my back, and we're that way with each other and with the greater the greater family. So there might be some of that. I don't know, but I think that that safety and comfort that I had growing up, even if my parents weren't in my immediate presence, is probably also something that my father had learned culturally. I'm not sure. And I have to add that as Iranians, I think we're one of the more privileged minorities within the country, in that many of us came with a lot of money and established in areas with a lot of money, whereas in other minorities have clearly not had that opportunity. So I think that there is a bit of privilege included in that. People talk about minorities as if we're all in the same bucket, but it's just not true. Like there are major differences. And I think that on one side, because we're Middle Eastern, we're categorized that way. There's issues with that, and politics get involved. And then on the flip side of it, there is the general affluence that comes with many of the people who've migrated here, and there's that side of it. So,
I don't think Americans realize that if you took somebody from Texas, California, and Maine and threw them in the same room, they'd all look at each other like they were foreigners. Because even within the United States, each of those areas has a vastly different way of talking, behaving, ideology, expectations. And I think we forget that. So, yeah, and now you're looking at a multitude of countries, half of which have warred against each other for decades. And same thing goes through, the whole eastern part of the world as well. So look at this. North America can't even get along. So
yeah. And I have my thoughts on that as well.
In any case, we are here to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, A 6-Week Guide to Reclaiming Your Soul?
Yeah. So I went through a major life event at the end of 2013. I went through a breakup with my partner of 9 years. We had 2 kids together. A partner of 13 years, and we were good friends for 9 years prior. So 22 years of friendship, love, commitment, loyalty. And 2 kids, and everything blew up after a 20-minute conversation at the end of 2013. And really propelled me into what I call an abyss of nothingness, which was frightening and confusing for me. It was frightening because I didn't understand the degree of brokenness that I was feeling. It became quite clear to me that it was more than just a broken heart, and I didn't understand why, because I had checked off so many of the boxes that everybody hopes to check off. Homes check, cars check, businesses check, positions check, gorgeous community, friends, status, and all of that. And I felt dead inside, and I didn't understand why. And I was confused. So I plunged into some deep soul work without really knowing what I was doing for a very long time. I call it bobbing for spiritual apples. Just like my hashtag early on, my motto was better than this. And the thought was, if the next moment, hour, day was better than the last, then it was an improvement. So tiny, tiny steps and many, many aha moments through the 6 years. And then once I truly saw the light, so to speak, and really righted my own ship, I realized in looking back that if I knew what I was doing in those 6 years, that the process could really be distilled into 6 weeks. And so I wrote the book that I wish I had when I was at that crossroad. But I have to also emphasize that the book isn't meant specifically for people who are at a crossroad, though I do think that it will resonate with those people most. It's truly written for anyone who feels they are living a muted life. Like they may have everything or they may not have everything, but not feeling their inner fire in any way. Like they are checking off boxes, but because it's expected of them, not because of what is burning bright inside of them.
Do you think most people live like that?
From the inside out? Absolutely not. And there's a reason for that. Would you like me to?
Yes, sure. Yeah. Tell us why.
So there's more and more studies. We hear about disassociation, especially in the world of therapy or psychology. And there's now new studies that show that disassociation can happen at a very early age, and that we all disassociate to some degree, from the super mild to the extreme. And what happens as babies, and they say that it's somewhere between 0 and age 5 or 7. So as babies, toddlers, we are, we are living our joie de vivre, like we are beaming light. It's not like you look at a baby and you'd be like, where is its joy? Because it's just like, yeah, or a toddler. But then something happens, and it could be something traumatic if you're in a toxic household or an unhealthy situation, or it could be super mild, like you were in your crib and you cried and your parents took too long to come and get you. So there's that level of disassociation which says, oh, the cues that I am taking from the inside are not helping me deal with what is coming from the outside. So we stop listening to that inner voice that are what I call our true essence, which is our soul, and start taking our cues from the outside. And you start learning the do's and don'ts and the rules and the regulations, and then getting the grades so you can get the certificates and go to the colleges and study, so you can get the jobs, and then get the jobs to get the other jobs, and then the jobs to get the other jobs, and the position after position after, right? So at some point, something happens and you're like, wow, WTF, which is where I got to, like, okay, box check, box check, box check. And none of it adds up to my self-worth. And so in order for us to live from that space, we have to do a lot of excavating and undoing. In the book, I talk about, I think it's a really great visual and worth mentioning. Did you ever see The Black Stallion?
It's probably been a long time since my kids were little.
Yeah, so it's Francis Ford Coppola movie and really profound. It's just super, super quickly. The story is about a horse and a gorgeous stallion and a boy that gets stranded on an island after a shipwreck. And they, first are afraid of one another and then slowly become friends, and the horse allows the boy to ride bareback, and there's all these gorgeous scenes of them, going back and forth. And then they are discovered, and they try to separate the horse from the boy, and neither one of them will have it. And so they bring the horse and the boy together again. And in order for the boy to be with the horse, they start teaching him to be a jockey. And he learns all the rules and the regulations, and they gear him up and dress him up and all of that. And then they participate in this really big race, and out of the gate, the boy and the horse stumble, and all the other horses are taking off, and you watch the boy, so they regain balance and they start again. And you watch the boy, and it's like close up of him. And I'm telling you, every time I tell this story, I still get chills, because he starts stripping away all of his clothes, like his helmet, his goggles, his whip, everything. And he goes back to the way he rode the horse on the island. And that's like the premise of my entire first half of my book. It's the undoing of all the stuff that you've been told you should do, or ways of looking at life that don't serve you. So you're coming back to your question of, do you think that most people live that way? No, because that is not the world we live in. We're conditioned to take our cues from the outside and check off all the things so that we will feel worthy. And the problem with that is that none of it added up lasts for that long. This is why I tell people not to be addicted to happiness either, because it's temporary. So like you get the position and you're in it for a while, and then you want something else, and then you want something else. And all of those things are great, but they do not add up to one's self-worth. So we need to step back and truly find our inner essence, our inner fire, our soul, and start living from that place, which, if you are a amazing electrical engineer, continue being that amazing electrical engineer. It doesn't mean that you shift or go, join an ashram or anything. It is about where you live and operate from. So rather than the outside in, it's from the inside out.
I like it.
Thank you.
I think it's a struggle for people. I just call it waking up. And we've talked about this many times. I think most people are just asleep to this. When we were chatting before we got to the book, you said we were talking about programming as kids and how young it starts. It sounds like that's what you were referring to as well in what you were talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not being able to trust our inner voice and consuming a whole lot of white noise that shields us from getting back to our inner voice. I mean, people talk about, following your bliss. I would say 98% of the people in the world don't even know what that is. Like where, how, okay, sure, So, and bliss looks like, Instagram selfies or, vacations on yachts and all of that. And again, all great, but that does not equate to lasting fulfillment and self-worth and such. So you're always just grasping, and it will never be enough. I guarantee you.
Things will never be enough. It's funny because there was a quote in the book that jumped out to me. And you said, according to the U.S. National Science Foundation, an average person has about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. Of those, 80% are harmful, 95% are repetitive thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapists have a term for it. It's ANT, automatic negative thoughts, but it's call it the monkey mind. I'm with the monkey mind. Why do we have so many negative thoughts?
It's how we are made up. We are, as humans, we are prey, the same way that a loud sound happens and your cat is like, we're no different. We are made to protect ourselves. And the amygdala, which I don't know if you remember that I call her Amy G. Dalla. And I say that I have a love-hate relationship with Amy in that, the amygdala is there to protect us. But we also live in a state of paranoia and anxiety and all of that because our minds skew toward the negative. So we have many thoughts, mostly negative and mostly repetitive. And then what do? We add new information 24/7, right? As soon as we wake up, our mind chat. And then what do? We check our phones, and then our to-do list, and then social media and television and all of that. So one big washing machine of a lot of information and mostly negativity. And then you've got social media. And I talk about in the first chapter of the book, I talk about the social dilemma because the creators of the social media platforms were on camera saying that we did not intend to create the Frankenstein that we created. So, and again, I have nothing against social media, but if we can see it for what it is, the same way that, when TV came out, everybody was sitting around the TV for a very long period of time up until the time, thank God, it would actually turn off. It would go off at like 10 o'clock at nighttime or 12 o'clock. And that's where TV dinners came around up until somebody's like, well, maybe that's not such a good idea, and then we started, regulating ourselves and such. But we don't really do that with social media, and we don't do that with information. So I talk a lot about the need for that. Two things really in the mind section, which is the very first week. It's realizing that we are not our thoughts, which I could talk more about, and then limiting the information that we bring in so that we stop this washing machine. We take control of the monkey mind rather than it having control of us, which I think is what the result of it is what we see in this world is everybody being a slave to their monkey minds and thinking that we know what reality is.
And so when you look at the book, it's how to stop this. And you break it down over 6 weeks to be read over 6 weeks. And there's two parts to the book. The first part which is, I guess, about 3 weeks, is the detox part. Why do we need to detox?
So the white noise that I mentioned, it's that. And it's also really acknowledging and defining the various parts of us that need tending through that jumble, because we often, like the heart, body, and mind, we sort of like, we mix and, we task different parts of us with the wrong tasks. Like we make logical decisions when they need to be decisions of the heart, and vice versa. We ignore our bodies up until the time it is like, listen to me, you know what I mean? So not only taking care of it, but really shifting our relationship with each and becoming aware of what it can and cannot do. Like I think our minds are a beautiful thing. They make beautiful CFOs. They suck at being CEOs. Why? Because they rabbit hole, and it's always the worst case scenario and all of that. CEO is like your soul, which is just like full of wisdom and courage and steady on, regardless of the mind chatter. So you don't want to rely on your mind solely when you are making a decision, unless it's, like purely a financial decision, which I would argue is somewhere between the mind and heart. So the first part of the book is really about excavating. It's that boy on the horse in that race, just taking off layers and layers of everything that does not serve us anymore, so we can actually get to our soul. And then the second part of it is, once we are back in touch with our true essence, what do we do with it? We found our quote unquote bliss. How do we live it? So, and just very quickly, week 4 is all about play, which is my favorite chapter in the week, and I could talk about play. And week 5 is as woo-woo as the book gets. I really try to take the woo-woo out of this process, because nothing in the soul work that I have done has felt woo-woo. There's no magical thinking. There isn't like lighting candles and incense and like wishing things to be better. It's hard effing work. And this world is super, super challenging, and it will always be this way. I mean, hopefully, we will see some dramatic positive changes, but the assumption should be that it is this way. And how do we move as gracefully as possible through this life, given everything? So that's chapter 5. And then chapter 6 is, after you've done all the work of the work, is about rewriting your story, should you feel the need, from the inside out. And again, it isn't sort of like, live your best life, best of luck to you. I actually have a method to do so with a Venn diagram and such.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. That's the Ikigai diagram, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. We've talked about that. So let's go back to the early part, because as part of this, you reference a daily purge. What do you suggest we purge first?
it's not even a matter of purging anything first. It's a matter of just purging. So when we wake up and our minds, try your best not to reach for your phone, but even if you reach for your phone, at some point, put it down. And really, the daily purge came out of me knowing that not everybody is a meditator, right? No one, it's like everyone says that they wish they could meditate, but many people don't, and they get antsy and all of that. So instead of, oming it out, or Julia Cameron in her book, The Artist's Way, 30 years ago, talked about the morning pages where you write 3 pages of unstructured narrative, whatever comes to mind. So the daily purge is kind of like that, except that you purge however way you want. So that washing machine that starts going, you start taking the stuff out. So instead of it cycling, you just purge it out, vomit it out, and you can do so however way. My go-to is kind of dance and shouting it out. I do this little weird ritual, but you can do it however way you want to. You can do it by doodling. You can do it by, cartwheeling and doing it. You can go for a run and shout it. You could go to your backyard and shout it out if it won't freak out your your neighbors. But that's truly what it's about. And as crazy as it sounds, it is so liberating. It is so amazing because it's an instant clearing of your slate before your day. And even if you're a meditator, I suggest doing the purge before you meditate, because you'll go that much deeper when you have purged. So it's sort of like meditation, but on steroids. Because all you're doing is letting go of those thoughts. We can't control what comes into our minds, but we can control what we hold on to, right? So just purge out all of those things.
Beyond the mind, you talk about a heart detox, though.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
People say follow your heart, and I believe that's an absolute misnomer. You should absolutely not follow your heart. Because, and this is what I mean about, distinguishing between the brain, heart, body, and soul, because I think for most people it's kind of jumbled. And once you actually name them, you realize that you have a different relationship with each. So if, I'm spiraling towards something, I tell my mind to shut the F up and I'm going to still, do whatever I'm doing. And the heart, the heart is often referred to as the inner child. I call it in the book, I call it your inner puppy. It's the last person you go to lead the way, right? You don't go to a child and be like, well, what should I do next? Right? All a child wants, or a puppy wants, is to be seen, to be loved, to be acknowledged, to be cared for. That is what you do with your heart. So, and you do so by protecting it from people and situations that don't work. And I tell people, there's a whole section on assessment of putting situations and people in various categories. And I call that taser, shield, filter, or hug. The taser category are for toxic people that just need to be tasered out of your life. Everybody's got, not physically, emotionally, mentally taser. Do not physically taser anyone. Then there's the shield section, which could be like an ex that you co-parent with, a boss that you don't like. With them, you set very strong boundaries and you keep it and you reinforce it. The filter is for the oversharers. We all know those people who, you sit next to them on a bus or on social media and they're sharing far too much. And there's a danger in that because when people don't have the full context for what you're sharing, they add their own stories and then they come in with their own opinions, and it never goes the way one hopes. So that's filter. And then hug is for those who have gained the privilege, deserve the right to be at your table, as Brene Brown says. And those people have the right to criticize you also because they know you best, and they've created that safety with you. Like my two besties, they're not soft and squishy, and they call me on everything. So I talk a lot about that. And I also talk about basic emotions and complex emotions, and why all of that is really important to acknowledge and not shy away from. We're so addicted to happy feelings and pushing down the negative feelings. But it's really, really important to sit with your frustration, to sit with your anger, to sit with your grief, and truly acknowledge it instead of pushing it down, because it will squirt sideways at some point anyway. So that's the heart detox that is really important in our way to reclaiming our soul. It's, again, white noise to get to the essence of us.
Just letting go and getting out of our daily routines and all the distractions we have. And yeah, it's funny, as you look at people, like the more I've learned, the more I can see it. It just becomes clear as day, but when you don't look for it, you're just blind to it. And I think that's a journey for people to be able to see that as it goes on. One of the things that you talked about is breath work. I actually just finished reading a book on breath by James Nestor. And it's amazed me how much our breathing affects our state of mood and our health and how we're feeling and everything else. And it's amazing that if you can control the breath, you can actually control the emotion. It's not the other way around. I think too often our breath responds to emotion because we don't take control of the breath and control the emotions.
Half the time I forget to breathe. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like I haven't breathed in the last 5 minutes because I'm like, expecting something or whatever. So getting in touch with our breath is super important. And there is breathing, like when one is meditating, there's a lot of attention to one's breath. And then there's breath work. And those are very, very different. The breath work is structured so that it calls up various emotions. And there's breath work that you can do that builds a lot of energy and stamina. And then there's breath work that you can do that calms and soothes. So it really depends on the type of breath work. And I talk about the variety of it. But it is, the first time I did it, I felt high. I was like, how? How is it that? And it was after 30 minutes of really, really intense breath work that was guided. And it was profound, really, really profound. So the power of breath, and again, it isn't just, breathe in, hold it, concentrate on the breath going in, going out. All that is important. But when you do breath work, it is like, the difference between a, like slow dancing and like an all-night rave, or house music, just like, I mean, it is so intense and gorgeous.
It is, I think, and I've seen Wim Hof talk about it, and I know he does a lot in that space, but what he's able to do as a human is just incredible. I mean, he's broken so many barriers, and it all begins with breath work. And he did not invent it. And this is what I'm starting to realize is most of this breath work has been around forever. We've forgotten how to do it and how to live. And I think that's the biggest problem overall across whether it is breathing, eating, moving, all of these different areas, sleeping. We have forgotten how to live and how powerful we can be. And it's just incredible what humans can do if they learn how.
Well, and the mind, the body is spectacular. I mean, I talk about what the body is able to do on its own. How, why, where did it come from? Why, I mean, but it is mind blowing, and new discoveries that, are what they are finding in the universe matches what we have internally. Like we are literally stardust and really magical. And the truth of it is that there is so much that we still don't know. And, and all the scientific discoveries, it isn't like it didn't exist and then science discovered it and then it came into existence. It was always there. We just happened to finally go, oh. So there's so much more. I mean, they thought for the longest time that our minds were set, right? You grow up and you're pretty much set. And then suddenly, boom, neuroplasticity and neuroscience, no, that's not the case at all. And it could completely change. So, I mean, our bodies are incredible, and it amazes me included, how much we neglect it or abuse it. We just expect it to come along, up until the time it doesn't. And then it stops everything. I have a section in there about disease. No matter how much woo-woo work you do, no matter, how many degrees you get. I mean, you look at someone like Steve Jobs, I mean, it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter how much you accomplish. The body will do what the body does. And we have to shift our relationship with it as our only sacred vessel through this life. Pure and simple.
That it is. And that kind of brings us to the second half of the book, which is to play. So what does that mean, to play? So I had the privilege of spending an afternoon with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Stuart Brown. He's kind of known as the godfather of play, adult play, and he wrote a book called Play, and he has a great TED Talk on the same subject. And I've always been fascinated, even before I met him, about play. I find myself to be a very playful person, and it's how I walk through life. It's how I parent. It is in relationships, and I wanted to learn more about it and find out why it is that we stop playing at something and not surprisingly enough, the play, the stopping to play comes around the same time as the disassociation does. Like as we start adulting, we play less and less.
And there also have been multiple studies on the effect of play on and the lack of it on children, on animals, and in adults. And study after study shows the benefit of it and how the lack of it can be damaging for our minds, hearts, and souls. So there are 8 different play personality types. So what might be play for me may not be play for you. And I describe those personality types. I'm the combination of 3 of them, which is the explorer, the creative, and the joker. There are some things within those play personalities that work and some that don't, so I combine them. Most people are a combination of a few. I'm the combination of 3 different play personality types. I am the creative, the explorer, and the joker. And most people are a combination of a few of them. And then there's ones that don't resonate with me at all. For example, the director, somebody who enjoys managing and coordinating like parties and things like that. And even though I do a lot of that, that does not spell play for me. Or the collector. Like I am very much the less is more in the less is more category. And so the idea of collecting something does not make my soul sing. So it's good to identify what play personality you resonate with or a combination of them. And then there are ways of playing accordingly. And I love that section. I just, I play all the time now. I play with my kids. They're teens now, so everything I do is somewhat cringy. And, but I play with our puppy. I play with my wife all the time. I have playmates, and I know it sounds funny, but I do. I have some friends that are just my go-to. I love going and shooting pool, but we do all sorts of fun, silly, goofy things like, getting on a seesaw or sliding down a slide or swinging, skipping. And again, it's not like I do that all day, but when I need a play break, I take a play break, and it's made a huge difference, huge. And I have all these plans around the idea of play, which I'm hoping to implement as my next step.
And I think as kids, you're told, stop horsing around, stop having fun, stop playing, behave.
The way that we play as adults usually is like getting together with our friends or buddies at a restaurant or at a bar. And then, there's alcohol involved. And what do we usually talk about? It's usually like work or our relationship, that's not play. I mean, all that is great, but that's not the play that I'm talking about, doing cartwheels in your backyard, dancing like, no one's watching. And when I dance on my own, it's good that nobody's watching. So, I mean, I could go on and on about play, but that's week 4 of the book. And it is very, very close to my heart.
And I think it's just, as adults, sometimes we need to learn to let go and just have that fun. And sometimes you need permission. So I give you all permission to have fun and play.
It's so important. It's so important. It's important at work. It's important in relationships. I used to run a series for Discovery, and we were in this like open space area, and and I had our production assistant buy a disco ball, and we put it in the middle of the space we were in. And whenever I felt that the stress level was too high, and it's TV and there's deadlines and such, and I would have him turn off the lights, turn on the disco ball. I would put on disco music, and we would have to dance as long as it took up until the time I felt the energy level, drop down. And at first people are like, what the frick are you doing? And, and then you would see them like the producers, like trying to dance, and like, I've got to get off the phone. And then everybody really started enjoying it. And it went from, sometimes it would last like 20 minutes long to like 3 minutes. We just would do a little, and then people started asking for it too. Can we have a dance break? I'm like, yes, but it has to be unexpected. So, and that's the thing about play also, is that to play, you have to do so without purpose. So you're purposely playing or unintentionally playing. If you're doing it for a reason, if you find yourself doing cartwheels and counting how many you're doing, or am I doing it better than the other person or whatever, that's not play. It's just it. Play is purely for the act of playing and for no other reason than whatever it is that you're doing.
So just have fun. Let go. Stop worrying about it all. It'll all work out in some senses, right? I think we spend so much time worrying about things that we absolutely have no control over.
Absolutely. And play really accelerates that, so it could be that, by playing, you may not resolve issues that you're having in your relationship, just by the act of playing. But truthfully, it does rewire our brain. And there are studies about that, so that you may possibly approach your relationship from a different place, So, yeah, I huge advocate of play.
I like it. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Living my life from my true essence. I truly believe that I am very much in my flow, and that flow brings everything.
You have to live on your own terms, not what someone else defined for your life. That's really what it comes down to. And with a not designing it from the outside. From inside.
It's truly tapping into that inner voice.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner? That
the magic that I was looking for was within me. And that might sound cliche, but I truly, for so many years, like with my ex, I truly believed that the magic was with her. And I thought that if I could get close enough to magical people and magical things, that I would, that magic would rub off on me, up until the time, it was taken away. And I was like, whew. So that if I was, to meet my younger self, I'd say you may not be able to see it now, but just trust that magic you seek is within you. There's a Rumi saying that says, you go from room to room searching for the diamond necklace that's around your neck,
Yes.
It's that.
And that's definitely a life lesson. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
That ultimately, none of us have the answer, that life is a matter of learning and becoming. And while there are many teachers in this world, the wisdom is within.
That it is. You just have to go looking inside instead of being distracted by everything out there, which is where we started. If people would like to learn more about you and about your book, what's the best way for them to find you?
So anything that is related to me as an author is in my name. So ShirinEtasom.com. My social handles are also Shirin Etasam. And I love hearing from people. So if you DM me or reach out through the website, I do my very, very best to reply to people personally. I frankly love hearing from people. I may not do it in comments because there's a lot of activity, but I do try my very best to get back to people if they personally message me. I might not do it immediately, but I do it.
It gets overwhelming.
Correct.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the great conversation and the opportunity.
Are you ready to play? It sounds like fun. That was the best thing about having little kids. We got to play and just have fun. Looking forward to the next round with grandkids. In the meantime, I'll find other ways to play. As I mentioned during the chat, breathing is a lost art. And having just read Breath by James Nestor, my eyes are reopened to how much more work, or should I say, play, I need to do with my breath. What about you? What can you change based on today's conversation? Is it detoxing, playing more, or just finding your ikigai? Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode and got value, who do you know who would appreciate it as well? Friend, family member, would you mind sharing this episode of Richer Soul? Wherever you do that sort of thing, or just tell people about it. I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Next week, we've got Creating a Positive Influence with Brian Smith. I know you're going to enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.